So today we're going to be learning about Punnett squares. They're made by this guy named Punnett who studied a lot of genetics in butterflies, and they're basically just a square. It's an organizer, or kind of like a table. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at our two plants. We have a long stem pea plant, and remember long stem is dominant. So it could have the genotype of big L, or big L, little l. In our case, we're going to choose the big L, little l. And for the short stem plant, that has to be homozygotic because the short characteristic is recessive. So the only genotype it could have is little l, little l. So we're going to see what these gametes produce. So again, if the parent is big L, little l, then the two gametes we can produce are big L and little l. And if the parent is little l, then the only gametes we can produce are little l, little l. So now we're going to put these gametes on a table. So we put the dad on one side, the mom on the other, and pretty much just do all the possible combinations in the boxes. As you can see, the top two, those are going to be long stem plants, and the bottom two are going to be short stem plants. And the top are heterozygotes, and the bottom are homozygotes. So let's talk for a minute about genotypic ratio versus phenotypic ratio. Genotypic ratio is the expected number of offspring with a particular genotype. So as you can see, we have two different genotypes here. Phenotypic ratio is the expected number of offspring with a particular phenotype. In our case, we're going to see two of the same ratios, but in other cases you can see different ratios. So if we take a look here, long to short, and I apologize again for the handwriting, it is 2 to 2, which you can simplify to a 1 to 1 ratio. And then if we take a look over on the other side at genotypic ratio, heterozygote to homozygote recessive is 2 to 2 again, and so the ratio is 1 to 1. Alright, so now we're going to take a look and think about ratios as a probability. If you have these two plants have 4 baby plants, it doesn't mean that there's going to be exactly 2 that are short-stemmed and exactly 2 that are long-stemmed, but that's the probability. Just like if you flip a coin 4 times, you expect that half the time it'll be heads and half it'll be tails, but you know from experience that's not always true. So if we calculate all the probabilities, again, it's just probability. So it's 2 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 4, and all these come out to be about 50%. Alright, so now we're going to try something a little bit different. It's called a monohybrid cross, and this is because we have two plant parents that are hybrids, which means that they're heterozygotes. So they have a dominant allele and a recessive allele. In this case, yellow pea color is dominant. It's called monohybrid because it's just one gene that we're looking at. So we notice that each of them have big Y, little y, so both of them will be able to produce the same pairs of gametes, which is one big Y or one little y. Alright. So on the dad's side, we're going to write the big Y and the little y. And on the mom's side, we're going to write the big Y and the little y. Notice we're going to have different combinations. We have a homozygotic dominant. So far we have 2 heterozygotes. And then we have a homozygote recessive. So this looks different already from the previous example. So the homozygote recessive is going to be green peas because that's the recessive trait. And then, of course, all of the plants that have a dominant gene will produce yellow peas. So now we want to think about the probabilities. What's the probability that we'll have yellow peas? Most of them are yellow, so we're going to get 3 out of 4, or 75%. For green peas, that's going to be 1 out of 4, or 25%. Okay, and then what's the chance that they'll be heterozygous? Remember we saw 2 with big Y, little y, so that's 50%. And then we saw 2 different kinds of homozygotes. We saw homozygous dominant, which is big Y, and homozygous recessive, which is little y, and that's half. Okay, so now we're going to give you a couple problems to try. So what happens if you cross a purple plant with a white plant? So the purple gene is dominant, so that's big P, and then the recessive trait is white, and so that's going to be the little p. I know it's hard to distinguish, but that's a big P here, little p there, little p, little p. So those are what you'll be using for this example. Our next example is if you cross two purple plants that are heterozygous. So they're each going to be able to produce the same number, the same kinds of alleles. A big P and a little p, a big P and a little p. Okay, and your very last problem, just kind of a challenge, is called a dihybrid cross. Because you have a hybrid crossing with this other plant,